Have you ever gotten a message from someone, maybe an old classmate, maybe someone from a past social circle, and thought, wait, really? Now? There's something quietly surreal about being noticed, pursued, chosen by someone who once looked right through you. And if you're a man in your late 30s or 40s, there's a decent chance you've experienced some version of this. The women who once seemed out of reach, or who barely registered your existence, are suddenly very interested. And instead of celebrating, you find yourself asking, what actually changed here? Today we're going to answer that question. Not with bitterness, not with score settling, but with the kind of honest psychological and social analysis that actually helps you make good decisions. Because understanding why this happens is far more valuable than simply enjoying the flattery. Welcome to Aphorism Archive. Let's get into it. Let's start by naming something that most men in their 30s and 40s have felt but rarely talk about directly, the experience of being invisible in your younger years. You weren't a bad person. You weren't unambitious. You were decent looking, reasonably funny, working hard on yourself. But in the dating landscape of your 20s, you were background noise. The women you were most drawn to were drawn to someone else, usually someone louder, flashier, or further along on the status ladder than you were. Social psychology has a name for what was happening there. Researchers call it assortative mating, the tendency for people to seek partners who match or slightly exceed their own perceived social value. In your 20s, a woman at the height of her social currency, her looks, her novelty, her freedom, was operating at a perceived value that a 26-year-old guy still building his foundation simply couldn't match. It wasn't personal. It was, in a very real sense, a timing problem. But here's what's fascinating: timing, by definition, changes. The man who was invisible at 27 is often the most compelling person in the room at 42. Not because he magically transformed, but because the landscape around him did. And the women who once operated from a position of abundant options are now doing something quite different. They're looking at him. Really looking. So what happened? Why now? And more importantly, what does it mean, and what should you do with it? How social value actually changes over time. To understand this shift, you have to understand something that evolutionary psychologists have studied extensively: the different timelines on which men and women build and sustain social value in the mating market. For women, the factors that historically signal reproductive value, youth, physical health, facial symmetry, peak relatively early and decline gradually over time. This isn't an opinion or a judgment, it's biology. Anthropologist David Buss has studied mate preferences across 37 cultures and found that in every single one, men placed a consistently higher value on youth and physical attractiveness than women did. For men, the equation is almost inverted. The qualities that women consistently prioritize, resource acquisition, social status, confidence, emotional stability, these are things that take time to build. A man at 22 is almost by definition at the early stages of developing what makes him maximally attractive to a long-term partner. What this creates is a kind of social crossing point. In their 20s, women hold more relative leverage in the dating market. By their late 30s and 40s, that equation has shifted considerably. The man who spent his 20s and 30s building his career, his emotional intelligence, his sense of self, often finds himself at his most compelling right at the moment the women who once had endless options are facing a much narrower field. This is sometimes framed cynically, as if women are simply desperate or men are simply triumphant. But that framing misses the more interesting truth: these are two people who are, for the first time, actually at compatible stages of life. The 42-year-old man who has built himself into someone of genuine substance and the 40-year-old woman who has shed the superficiality of her early 20s, who now genuinely values depth, reliability, emotional presence, they may actually be far better matched than either of them would have been to each other 15 years earlier. The question isn't why is she choosing me now? The better question is this person choosing me for the right reasons, and am I choosing wisely too? The 3 types of older women who reach back. Not all late interest is created equal. And this is where clarity becomes really important. When a woman over 40 turns her attention toward the kind of man she may have overlooked before, there are generally 3 distinct dynamics at play, and they lead to very different relationship outcomes. The first type is what I'd call the genuinely evolved woman. This is someone who has done real internal work. She's moved through relationships, processed what went wrong, developed self-awareness, and arrived at a place where she genuinely knows what she values. She's not choosing you because you're the last option standing. She's choosing you because at 40, she's finally clear enough on herself to recognize what actually matters, and you have it. She might tell you something like, "I spent my 20s chasing a feeling, and I'm looking for something real now." And she means it. The depth she brings to a relationship at this stage, the lack of games, the directness, the genuine appreciation for who you are, is extraordinary. This is the person worth investing in. The second type is the woman in transition. She's been through something, a divorce, a long relationship that ended, a professional upheaval, and she's recalibrating. She's genuinely open to something different than what she pursued before, but she's still mid-process. She may not fully know herself yet. There may be unresolved grief or resentment she hasn't worked through. This doesn't make her a bad person or a bad partner. But it does mean you should move slowly. Let time reveal who she actually is before you make significant commitments. The woman in transition can become the genuinely evolved woman, but that transformation is hers to make, not yours to engineer. The third type is the woman operating from urgency. Her choices are driven primarily by a closing window, biological, social, or financial, rather than a genuine connection with you specifically. She may be warm, she may be charming, but the pace and pressure of how she pursues the relationship tells a different story than her words do. Attachment researcher John Bowlby's work on anxious attachment is relevant here. When people feel a scarcity of what they need, they often pursue connection with a kind of desperation that looks like intensity but functions more like panic. If the relationship feels like it's moving at an uncomfortable speed, if she seems more invested in the outcome of the relationship than in actually knowing you, pay attention to that signal. Here's the part of this conversation that I think matters most, and it's the part most channels skip entirely. What does this shift in the dating landscape reveal about you? Because something real did change. Yes, the market shifted. Yes, the dynamics evolved. But if you're a man in your 40s who is suddenly more sought after than you were at 25, it's probably not entirely coincidental. You likely spent those years building something. Maybe it was financial security. Maybe it was emotional groundedness, the ability to be present in a relationship without being reactive or avoidant. Maybe it was simply the confidence that comes from having survived enough hardship to know that you can handle what life throws at you. These are genuinely attractive qualities. Not to everyone, not in every context, but to a certain kind of woman, at a certain stage of life, these are the qualities that feel irreplaceable. And that matters. There's a passage in psychologist Abraham Maslow's work that I keep coming back to in this context. He wrote that self-actualized people who have moved through the lower levels of need and arrived at genuine self-expression, form the healthiest, most fulfilling relationships. Not because they need a partner less, but because they bring more of themselves to the partnership. The invisible man of your 20s who quietly built himself into someone of substance. That's a self-actualization story. And the woman who recognizes that at 40 and responds to it? She may actually be demonstrating her own growth, her own shift from seeking status to seeking depth. So before you frame this entire phenomenon as women finally settling for us, consider the more interesting framing. Maybe you've both finally become who you needed to be to recognize each other. Alright, so how do you actually move through this intelligently? Because the worst possible response to sudden increased attention is to simply receive it uncritically. Here's what wisdom looks like in this moment. First, resist the ego narrative. When your attention suddenly increases, there's a powerful pull to interpret it as validation, proof that you've finally won something. That framing will cloud your judgment. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to find a genuine partner. Those are very different things, and confusing them leads to bad decisions. Second, slow down the evaluation. The same patience and deliberateness that helped you build yourself over the past decade, apply that to your romantic choices. A woman worth investing in will be fine with a pace that allows you to actually know each other. If someone is pushing urgency, that's information about where she is, not a reason to accelerate. Third, know what you actually want. This sounds obvious, but many men arrive at their 40s having spent so long focused on becoming attractive that they never got specific about what they're attracted to. Do you want a long-term partner? Children? Companionship with independence? Sexual connection? Intellectual partnership? Get honest with yourself before you start evaluating someone else. Fourth, look at how she talks about her past. Not with the goal of judging her, everyone has a past, but as a window into her self-awareness. A woman who takes some ownership of how things unfolded, who can talk about her younger self with both honesty and compassion, is someone who has done the work. A woman who narrates every past relationship as a story of someone else's failure, with no reflection on her own role, that pattern will almost certainly extend to a relationship with you. Fifth, and this is perhaps the most important, let yourself be genuinely open. For men who spent years being overlooked, the sudden reversal can create a defensive posture. Skepticism is a protective mechanism. I understand it. But closed-heartedness is not the same as wisdom. There are genuinely extraordinary women in their 40s who have lived fully, grown substantially, and are ready for something real. Don't let the cynicism of the internet convince you that all late interest is suspect. It isn't.